at my earlier talk in the monetization track, and I just want to point out again, here's my Twitter handle. I have a little bit of a friendly feud going on with Cristiano Ronaldo, and I'm thinking that maybe I can beat him this week for new Twitter followers. So, boy, just fell. Nobody's a soccer fan. Okay, let me just adjust this thing for myself. Okay, are you lazy? Are you talentless? Do your ears pick up if I say multi-level marketing or work from home and make money in your spare time or get rich quick? Well, I know you've heard of mobile apps. They're all over, and these things are a gold mine. I mean, everybody who has a mobile phone has to buy them, and everybody has a mobile phone. So you say you don't know where to start? Not a problem. There are thousands of proven moneymakers out there that you can use for, let's call it inspiration, okay? And if you don't even know how to do it, it's not a big deal. You have to have a little bit of computer skill, but really more just a burning desire to succeed. So let's start with the easiest approach. It's not the most creative, but it definitely gets the job done. And really, isn't that what it's all about? So sometimes you'll find that perfect app. It's almost as though the real developer just reached into your head and knew exactly what you would have made. So just borrow that. This is actually really effective if you download the app from one store and upload it somewhere else where it isn't yet available, because the original author may not even discover this is happening for quite some time. Now, say instead that you have part of an app, maybe not the whole thing, but it might be overkill to actually copy someone's work wholesale. So perhaps they just have a great sound effect you'd like to leverage, or an interesting, distinctive background. Well, in order for you to create your app in the style of theirs, you know, as an homage, you just have to incorporate some of their work. And besides, if you don't show their lovable character or their specific font, how is anybody going to recognize your homage if they don't recognize the original inspiration in your product? Sometimes a great app will have a great name. Plague. Cut the rope. Microsoft Office. You know, if your app is similar or exactly the same, you know, you might take a cue from its name and choose one that, while not exactly the same, generates the same connotation, right? It conveys the same sense. One that, if you're not paying close attention, you might accidentally confuse with the more popular title. This also works with icons, by the way, or descriptions. If they're working for the other guy, they'll probably work for you. And I don't know if you heard about Kim Kardashian's game that I think last year, in one quarter last year, it made something like $40 million. Well, it may be as a result of the fact that Kim is kind of sort of famous. And the great thing is that she's not the only famous person out there. And I bet you can think of a bunch of celebrities who would add a little pizzazz to your app. You could totally cut them in, you know, on the back end if it's successful. And if it's not, what do they care? They didn't have to do anything. If you really want to jump to the top of the list, though, you need to make sure that your users are saying good things about you. And this is really easier said than done, though, because a lot of customers, especially the ones who write reviews, have this unreasonable expectation of getting creative, original, or useful, entertaining content. So you don't have to worry too much, though. You can give your users something in exchange for a positive review, and one hand washes the other. And here's where you actually can be creative, right? You can make this work in a lot of different ways, with discounts, with virtual goods. You can offer prizes, even cash, although that's really kind of excessive, because the whole point of this is to generate cash flow and not throw it away on some loser just for their positive review. However, if you don't have the resources for these kinds of goodies for the real reviewers, you can take a completely different approach. And who says that each customer is only entitled to one vote? With a little creative scripting, you can let the avid devotee, or yourself, express the true depth of their appreciation for your app. Strong feelings, let's face it, require a strong statement. And what better way to convey this than with 12,450 5-star reviews delivered from the same IP address in 37 seconds. Now, if for some reason your developer account becomes inoperable, I don't know why that would be, but let's say you're no longer able to use it to publish your mobile apps, you may be forced to create a new one. This is actually a great way to get off to a fresh start. The likelihood that those App Store idiots will connect the dots is probably low, although you might want to use a different company name just in case. Similarly, you may occasionally be forced to repeatedly submit the same app over and over and over again before it finally slips through, before it's finally approved. But it may help if you make slight trivial changes between each submission, and sometimes it's particularly effective if you combine this with the previous approach so that it looks like it's coming from a brand new company, maybe one with less emotional baggage. A couple of final thoughts. There'll always be a market for personal information, so things like usernames, passwords, that sort of thing, financial data. So you might consider adding a keylogger to your app, maybe with an eye towards future monetization opportunities. And just top tip, emitting this data, writing it to files in clear text makes it much easier to process later on. So I'm just kidding, right? Hopefully my sarcasm came through. These are obviously the tactics to avoid. These are all submission practices that will definitely get you banned. I don't know if they'll send you to prison, but they will definitely get you banned. Some are still so common, though, that the major app stores, and even some of the minor app stores, have automated processes to handle rejection just out of hand when they see these. Some of them actually still require manual intervention, so somebody has to do a review or there's a complaint that gets filed. But the end result is always that the perpetrator is either immediately banned, blacklisted, or sidelined until their account is reviewed further. So if the ultimate outcome is always guaranteed to be bad for the quote-unquote sneaky developer, then why would anybody risk doing this? And the short answer really is to overcome the problem that we all face, which is the discovery problem. Everyone is dealing with this, right? The explosion of mobile has actually been great for developers because the market success of a few standard platforms has made it really easy to develop a single app that will reach a broad spectrum of users on one kind of device. It's also led to really standard, easy-to-use tools, in many cases, which are entirely free. So, of course, more developers means more content means more selection means more competition for the customer's limited attention. So how do you stand out? And of course, you already know that mobile apps, mobile games are hit-driven, right? It takes a ton of effort to get the word out and explain why people should download your app, explain how to get your app, where to get it. Basically, marketing is expensive. But you're in the industry. You're not the people who are out there to get rich quick. I mean, you might want to get rich quick. Who doesn't want to get rich quick? But you're not here today because you're looking to trick your way to success. You're either interested in expanding your reach, checking out new hardware, but not because you're trying to trick your way to success. Unfortunately, a lot of people are. A lot of people are. And I'll even resurrect a term from the 90s. It was often used to describe the mountain of schlock software that was cheap, derivative, and being shoveled out the door as fast as it could be created, and that, of course, is shovelware. It was coming out on CDs, which were the next big thing of the time, and everyone was doing it because it was super cheap to produce, and there was a gold rush. And that's exactly what's going on now. You get in, you create something, and you try to get your money fast before it collapses, your business collapses around you. So the mobile marketplace is actually a product of its own success because you've got all these speculators, and I'd even call them dilettantes, flooding the market with this terrible software and working as hard as they can to glut the consumer with the schlock that they're producing. How much does this software actually contribute to the geometric growth of every app store? I don't know. I think it's actually significant, though. I mean, it's easy to go find 12,000 clock apps, and most of them are not good. So as a result, the app stores have tried to develop these, I wouldn't say, let's see, not really performance, protection. They're trying to protect their users and make it easier for their users to zero in on the good content, and that includes doing things like creating manual lists, which is just another way of saying they're curating their content. They create automated lists based on the ratings or top sales. They try to surface those apps that get great recommendations from their user base, and of course they all try to put together showcases and bundles with specific partners that they're happy to work with. So this talk sort of grew out of my personal experience with some bad actors on the Amazon App Store. And I mean, I'm not even really on the front line. I'm not in like the content operations team that's actively reviewing and approving or denying submissions. But occasionally I would deal with a developer complaining because his app was blacklisted or his account was suspended, and I'd think, is this guy serious? I mean, can he honestly believe that what he's doing is honest? Does he actually not understand why we took action? And it happened enough that I thought, you know, we have to close ranks against these guys, because it's just so depressing to think how much work developers, especially indie small developers, have to expend just to counteract all the noise put out by these kinds of guys and girls. So what does this mean? What practical steps can individual developers take to protect ourselves? And are they really going to have a significant impact? Isn't this really just a problem for the app stores themselves? Well, in answer to the last question, absolutely not. Everyone can help make the mobile marketplace better. First, probably goes without saying, but it's worth saying again anyway, don't do any of these things yourself. It puts you in really bad company. It makes it really hard for you to, complain about anything bad that's happening with your work, of course. It jeopardizes your revenue because at any point, you're basically playing Russian roulette with the App Store, who might choose to blacklist you or turn you off. And again, it's really bad for your reputation. Plus, I personally will not like you anymore if you do this. Second, pay really close attention to the space. Keep an eye on all the app stores. Know what your competitors are doing. And this includes places where you may not even be available yet. So if you only create apps for Android, you should still pay attention to the Apple Store. If you write for iOS, definitely check out Google Play and Amazon. A great Android marketplace, by the way. I don't know if you've heard of the Amazon App Store, but chat with me later. I can hook you up. But anyway, the upshot is you need to know if somebody's exploiting your work. Third, know the law. Use it to your advantage. The DMCA is bad legislation for a lot of reasons, but it is the law in the US at least, and I think anybody who's releasing in the US is going to be subject to it, obviously. And it's really designed to protect copyright holders, which in this case would be you. Pay close attention to section 512. I don't think I mentioned that there, but that's important. 512 is the section that describes all the requirements and constraints around takedown notices and counter notifications and the responsibilities inherent in remaining DMCA compliant. So the app stores, which are all trying really hard to be DMCA compliant, adhere to this section, well, adhere to the entire act, but that really lays out their responsibilities very clearly. And of course, they're trying to protect themselves from any kind of liability and penalties. Plus, this law is federal, and in the US at least, the feds do not mess around. Fourth, make friends. Make friends at every app store. Know who you can contact if you find anything that's wrong, if you discover something amiss. And again, this means establishing connections even on the platforms where you don't have an app or you don't support that platform yet. And hint, you have at least one connection at Amazon now. Of course, you only benefit from this if you follow that Twitter handle. I'm just saying. Fifth, join a community. Reach out to other developers and introduce yourself. You need to build connections with those other people who make or even use your apps. You can connect to the customers if there's a user group, especially ones in the same category or genre as yours, because that way they'll watch your back, you can watch theirs, and you can help each other identify copyright infringement or imitators or rip-off artists. You, above all, know what to look for. And finally, the best defense is always a good offense. The best way to be successful, even in the face of all these imitators and copyright infringers, is to actually create genuine value. So being creative, original, distinctive, that's the key to achieving Appstore rank for real. So as an aside, a friend of mine wanted to lose weight, and he started exercising and eating right and doing all the things that you know you have to do if you want to lose weight. And it worked. People started noticing, and he actually dropped 20 pounds or so in about 4 weeks. And they would ask, like, "Whoa, what did you do? That's amazing. How did you do it?" And of course, nobody wants to hear, well, diet and exercise. So he would just say, rutabaga juice and fatty tuna. And what does that have to do with anything? Well, I guess, unfortunately, creating value is similar, right? There isn't a magic button. There's no recipe. There's no real secret. But there are some pretty tried and true strategies that you can apply. Let's call these the best practices to counteract the sneaky tips. So this is an old joke with a grain of truth. And if you're a creative person, which I think you are if you're here today, it's easy to interpret this quote in a really cynical way. But I think it's more constructive to think of it as people are comfortable with the familiar. So you need to look for ways to connect your app to what a customer knows. And this could be a common task, a game mechanic if it's a game, or a look and feel, some kind of reward structure, a plot device. It doesn't have to be a complete knockoff to be successful, but it must resonate somewhere or it will never even get downloaded to the customer's device. Don't reinvent familiar mechanisms or controls. So if you're designing a game, for instance, and it's a first-person shooter, movement should probably be on the left stick, camera is probably on the right stick. Casual games often rely on a simple single-button interface, so don't complicate things. It's okay to be innovative, but let your customers use the strengths and the abilities, the skills that they've honed in other applications. Choose the right business model. Advertising for evergreen apps. Premium for specialized functionality maybe, or an audience with a high turnover. So if you think about educational apps for first graders, you're going to have a whole new batch of students coming through every year. Free to play is probably a good bet for just about everything else. If you heard about our other monetization options like Amazon Underground, figure these into the mix. You need to know your customer and design appropriately. This is definitely true. I feel bad. Yogi Berra just died. I don't know if you heard of that, just in the last month. But you'd be surprised how many developers don't actually finish the last step, which is publishing. It's just as important to publish in the right place as it is to actually get out there. And you need to make sure that you're on the devices that your customers actually use. And I think I saw Paul Cutzinger talking about this topic earlier. Definitely is true. Maybe it's consoles at home, but it's a PC at work, or a phone on the train and a tablet when you get home. If you don't know, just be on as many platforms as possible. And this is actually easier than ever these days because there are so many different cross-platform frameworks and development tools that are available. Marketing may be the tax you pay for. This is actually one of my favorite quotes. Maybe the tax you pay for being unremarkable. But in the context of the mobile marketplace, this is really critical. There will always be examples of apps that are successful without doing a lot of marketing, but the developers who are consistently successful know they can't take chances here, and they spend the time and effort to market well. So when it comes right down to it, you're really the ultimate mover and shaker on your own app. Self-publishing at its very simplest means that there's nobody helping you publish your app, but it also means that you're in the best position to know exactly what you need to do in order to get the word out. You're the one who understands your customer the best. So regardless of the approach you take, you definitely need to get some basics right, like choosing a good name. It may seem silly or obvious, but the name you choose is critical. So you need to be descriptive. Goat simulator says everything, right? You know exactly what it is. Be distinctive. You need to avoid overly generic or common words or phrases. So something like book list, not a good name. Remember, you're going to have these potential users coming to you from all sorts of different places, but usually a search engine. So don't make them wade through hundreds of unrelated results to find you. Write your description like a dating profile. That's a good way to look at it, because you can start with a bang where the first line really sells. Then you highlight all the standout features. So use the second paragraph to hit all the high notes and explain your advantages over the competition. Use compelling subheads. So you want to set the hook and keep the person reading through the entire description. Each section should have some written artistry to get the users to keep going. And be aware that details really do sell. The creative titles reel people in, but it's the details that convince them to download. And mini-grade apps, it's sad to say, are overlooked simply because they don't present a good visual interface. Their icon isn't good, or they don't have great screenshots. So choose attractive screenshots and videos to help your app look its best. And remember, a huge percentage of app discovery comes through search or recommendations, which means that you're going to be displayed right along next to all your competitors. So pay close attention to how you might appear in that context. Leverage your catalog, because the more titles you create, the more noticeable you are. And a catalog of apps also allows you to cross-promote between them. So it gives you an opportunity to build your personal brand. Every new release is a chance to bring users back. You can send them an email and say, hey, check out my new app, or hey, you played Bubble Tumble 1 and we just came out with Bubble Tumble 2. Come check it out. And use every avenue at your disposal to get the word out. This means reaching out to your network, using social media, develop a Twitter account for your app, even if you don't have one yourself. Enter competitions that raises your profile. Blog about your daily progress. Use YouTube or Twitch. Paul talked about using Twitch as well. And in fact, I want to highlight some of the things he mentioned about reaching out to those influencers and advocates who can help you spread the news about your app. Tony Hawk is a famous skateboarder. I don't know if he's famous here. He's famous in the US, but he has a really canny way of connecting with his customers, and I think he does a really good job of connecting with them. So he knows that it's never too early to start. And an example is, I think Paul might have mentioned them, is Vlambeer, who has been live coding their latest project. And it's a great way to build interest in the title even before it's been released. It's not even playable yet, or it wasn't when they started, but it lets their customers, their potential customers, and their fans interact with them during the construction process. And this kind of direct interaction allows you to connect with the early adopters, too. These are the people who often introduce your app to the mainstream audience. They're the ones who first show the benefit or the fun, if it's a game, and they explain the concept. They're the ones who really get it at first, and they're the ones who help other people get it. You can also reach out to the industry professionals, which might be journalists, or if it's a game, league players. They can often be a trusted voice for a really large audience. So it's a great way to connect with them. Similarly, internet celebrities have massive online followings, and they can provide instant and immense exposure for your app, especially games. These guys are popular, guys and girls are popular because they're entertaining, right? So you need to make sure that your app actually gives them that opportunity to be entertaining. Let them riff on whatever it is they do that they think is funny. PewDiePie has weird, reactions to everything. He goes, oh my God! And if you can, I don't know how you'd build that into a photo app, but maybe you could do that. Another way to turn ordinary customers into fans is to foster their creative expression. So let them show their enthusiasm by welcoming community contributions and actually celebrate them if possible. So Watchmaker is a great example. They allow users to contribute their own designs, and it gives people the chance to show off a little bit, and they get to promote the stuff that they're designing for this app. And of course, guess what? They're also telling all their friends, hey, you should go to Watchmaker and check out my new watch face. And finally, break out of the main monetization loop. There are tons of ways to take it in new directions and generate alternative revenue. So this includes things like crowdfunding or coming up with new merchandise, alternative media, which may lead to new avenues of advertising revenue, and of course esports, which is up and coming these days. And a major benefit of generating revenue outside of your app is the opportunity to expand your fan base. So if someone buys a t-shirt with your app logo and other people see it and they say, wow, that's a super cool t-shirt, what's the deal with that app, how do I get it? Tell me all about that amazing product. So what do we take away from this? There will always be terrible people in the world. We need to kind of close ranks against them, and the way we do that is we don't be terrible people ourselves. That's the first step. Know the space, know what's going on in the area where you're working, defend your copyrights, and make sure you, that's really important because that's how you establish your right to continue. Have a friend at each store. I have cards too. If you didn't get my Twitter handle, I'm sure I can hook you up. Join industry groups. And then also know your customer, right? Publish everywhere they are and market to them. This means getting all the basics right, like the name, the description. You want to make sure all the art assets look great so that they are instantly excited and enticed. And then leverage your catalog to build your personal brand and reach out to all your social networks. And then finally, if you can, do something interesting with the new technologies like Twitch and turn all those fans into advocates and influencers on your behalf. That's it. Please take a moment at the end to fill out the survey. And coming up next, drinks. Thank you so much for coming.